Hello, this is Dr. Karen Midyet, and I am here to talk with you today on nutrition, health, and mental health. When I turned 50, which was 20 years ago, I had a epiphany that basically said, this is probably the second half of your life that you're entering. You probably need to make sure you pay attention to doing some new things with health and food and nutrition and supplements, and you better figure out about all those things. So on that journey at age 50, I found myself a trainer who happened to be wonderful about teaching me about nutrition as I worked on weight training and started my journey on my physical health and then my nutritional areas. So all of those were important to me back at age 50. And here I am at age 70, and it has even become even more important as I get older. And I work with older adults because at the time I wasn't working with older adults. And now at the last 10, 12 years, I focused exclusively on older adults. And I see the role that food and nutrition has on my clients, especially when they are under stress and anxiety and they're in a depressed mood. So today we're going to just do some basic understanding of all of these things and how they're interrelated. So food is pretty much natural medicine. And one of the reasons it's so important for us to continue to really look at that is in this world of health that we have, we are oftentimes given medicines by our physicians, and especially psychiatric medicines. There are oftentimes many side effects, and people have a struggle with doing well with those meds. Only 30% of the medicines will work for people. So there's an awful lot of people who don't get the benefit, or they have so many side effects that it's hard for them to utilize the medications that are supposed to work with your neurotransmitters. So if there are ways that we can improve our health in other ways other than meds, I am all for it. So I've been studying this on my own. A personal example is I have had a lifelong history with allergies, and I was diagnosed as a kid with being allergic to absolutely every animal except a giraffe and one other one. Maybe it was an elephant. But I was a pretty allergic kid. I was always getting rashes. I was, I would get sick every fall in relation to, I later found out, ragweed. And I was even sensitive to cold. So I suffered with this until I was in my 50s and was on this journey, and then was doing my own research and found out that I could work with different supplements to actually make a difference in my life, so that I could actually eat foods that were off limits for me when I used certain supplements to really help my body not be as reactive to some of the medicines, and also even my hay fever allergies. Since that time, I no longer take any allergy medicine. So I use supplements to actually support my body and my system so that my body isn't as reactive to things. So that just goes to show the power of using both supplements and in the relation of supplements to food. Another example of where sometimes we don't even realize that food can be can exacerbate things as well. People who have allergies sometimes, or maybe a food sensitivity, it might not be a typical allergy because the allergies will show up sometimes on those blood tests, but the food sensitivities, or actually the allergies show up on the pinprick test, but not necessarily on, in the same way on the blood tests. So sometimes some sensitivities or even gluten intolerances with some people will show up as almost like a panic attack or with incredible anxiety. And of course, I've had physicians tell people, oh, well, that's impossible. It is food. You can't get anxiety from food. Well, that just goes to show how much physicians sometimes really don't understand that our bodies can respond in many ways to things, and sensitivities can have many different reactions. It can be reactions to your gut, it can be bloating, it can be anxiety, and it can also be brain fog. All of those things are reactions potentially for food, with food. And if we don't identify which foods actually are problematic for us, we can continue to um, have problems with our gut as well as problems with our mood. So, I think a perfect example that some people can relate to is having, a ton of sugar after they have a great meal and they have dessert and sugar, and then they just get really sleepy and they crash. And so, and then they can't function for the rest of the afternoon, or at least until after they take a nap. So that shows how reactive our bodies can be to food. And so we have to figure out how to understand and manage all of those things. So one of the things that I have started to use after one of my new classes on nutritional healing is a food mood assessment. And the assessment I used was based on the work of Deborah Korn. No, it's Leslie Korn. And she does some incredible work in the area of nutrition, nutritional healing, and mental health. And I have been studying with her over the last number of months, and it is really exciting for me. Since this has been an area of interest for a long period of time, and I've done my own research and have had my own personal experience, it has been my greatest pleasure to be able to have somebody who systematized all of this stuff and made it available so that I could easily teach it to other people. So part of the first step that we need to learn about is to really take stock of how we eat, when we eat, and our reactions to the foods that we are ingesting, and whether or not they have an impact on us during the day. And that would be, taking stock of things in the morning, looking at our energy levels, what happens, what's your diet? Do you start with a glass of tea or a cup of coffee? Do you wait hours before you get anything into your body? And when you do, what are your reactions? What kind of things do you actually put in your mouth? Is it just a quick, bite that you end up, grabbing on the go, or do you cook yourself a full meal? One of the challenges to the people that I work with, since they're usually older adults, is that cooking is something that sometimes people get pretty tired of. They've been doing it a long time. They've been cooking for a lot of other people. And then sometimes they're by themselves. And the idea of cooking a full meal just is hard. And people don't always want to put the time in. Sometimes people don't know, but sometimes it's because they don't know what else to do, or they're doing what's easy just so that they get something into their body, and they don't realize the both the quality of the food that you eat, how you eat it, the times of day you eat it, the combinations of the things you put together actually make a difference in how your body reacts to it, and whether or not you even get the benefit of the nutrients that are in the food. Part of the research shows that the food and mind connection is complicated, and that we are affected. You know, our gut is affected by the food, and our mood is affected by our gut. And as we get older, our digestive system isn't as effective as it was from when we were younger. I know for my own self that at age 35, all of a sudden, I started having problems eating pizza, of all things. And then I realized, that those other cheesy things that I was always eating, double cheeses and everything else, I could eat them fine. And then all of a sudden I couldn't. And I developed a lactose intolerance when I got to be 35. And, so it's confusing sometimes when things that you were eating before all of a sudden are no longer friendly to your body. And then I started to have to look at supplements. And then, of course, I was able to, at that point, use lactose to be able to help me digest milk products. But that's just the beginning, because there are a lot of other enzymes that we can utilize that really make a difference, so that we can get all the vitamins, the minerals, and the nutrients from the food that we do eat. So paying attention to what goes on in your body, how it affects your energy, how it affects your mood, is important to begin to assess what kinds of things you really need to do to slowly change your diet. And diet, not necessarily being on a diet, but the kind of things that you eat and the ways you eat them, so you can promote better both mental health and physical health. Aging is a process that we're all going to go through. We're not going to get away from this world without getting older, just as a fact of life. And so we have to look at all the different things that we can do that make a difference to help our life be the best that it can be, and so that we can feel the best that we can feel. We can't do everything. I mean, some things are kind of built into our biology, but we also can lessen some of the negatives and increase some of the positives. And part of looking at good nutrition really can make a difference in your mood and in your feeling of energy. So, today I was going to talk a little bit about, the whole idea of integrative medicine and mental health. I mean, partly, what we're doing here is we're looking at the mind, the body, and how they're connected. And food is part of that. I mean, it's something that we obviously are nourishing ourselves, both hopefully in a good way. I mean, some people have developed a problem with food. They either eat too much or they eat too little. They use it as a way of comfort. And so sometimes the nourishment goes to an extreme that can create a problem for people, because it's a way for people to deal with their depression. And so they end up having food to kind of numb them out. I mean, or they could do drinking to numb them out. And some of that has to do with the kinds of food. What do people usually have during those times when they're stressed? Oftentimes they'll either have a drink, Or the other thing they might do is, load up on carbs and have, a pizza and lots of cookies and ice cream and all those things that in the moment helps them feel good. But afterwards, they get tired and they end up crashing and sometimes end up getting even more depressed after that. But it is one of the things that people have learned to do, and so we're part of what I work with people on is to come up with some other healthier ways of dealing with food so that we don't compound a problem that has been a part of your life. We can work on shifting things so that you can do some other things rather than eating carbs for self-medication. So food can be either positive when you're using it to create nutrients in your body, or it can be negative if you're using it as self-medication. And the other thing that we need to pay attention to is food can also be a source of helping us just have too much inflammation. And so we need to look at, because inflammation is oftentimes the cause of a lot of the diseases that we are seeing in our lives. So finally deciding to have a healthy relationship with food and looking at good eating habits is important to help us prolong our life. And the research has backed up that changing our diet can make a difference, sometimes a 10-year life expectancy difference between diet and exercise and how long we live if we can develop some good habits with food. So what can we do about it? I think we talked about the food diary as one way to at least assess what's going on. You can be mindful in your eating, so paying attention, not just eating mindlessly, but not watching TV and eating, which is what a lot of people do, or reading and eating. So that we pay attention to and get all the wonderful experiences of all the colors of food and the flavors and all the different things that go on when we're nurturing ourselves. I think the idea of eating with others, the social part of connecting with others, happens in meals. Eating with your children or your grandchildren is important. Teaching your children or grandchildren how to cook and all about healthful eating is an important thing that we can do. I taught both my children how to cook, and they are wonderful, healthy eaters at this point. Doesn't mean that they have things they don't like. I mean, we all have things that we don't like. I got to be a good cook because I was such a picky eater as a kid. I had to figure out ways to cook things that I enjoyed eating because I didn't like mustard and I didn't like mayonnaise and so many different things. So I had to figure out how to change recipes to be able to adapt to things that I could eat and couldn't. And I think the same thing happens to people who have intolerances of one sort or another. They have to learn how to cook without almonds, or they have to cook without gluten. Or right now, I'm a fan of the keto diet, and so I cook without very many carbs. I try to eat healthy carbs. I try to eat complex carbs, but I limit the amount of carbs that I eat because at this point I'm on a continued weight loss journey. I've lost quite a bit of weight, and I have more that I would like to lose. And for me, it's making a difference in my health. It's made a difference in my sleep, which has really helped me, and my breathing. And so we can see that sometimes the things that we choose to do, the things we ingest in our body, the exercise that we choose to do, walking or playing pickleball or playing volleyball or swimming or Tai Chi or yoga or any of the other kinds of fun things that you do to strengthen your body and your bones are all the kinds of things that are important so that you can enjoy the time that you have both with your children and if you have grandchildren. There is nothing worse than some of my older adults who have grandchildren who are debilitated physically and they can't lift up their kids or grandkids. And so working on your health and your nutrition and your exercise are all parts of the lifestyle kinds of choices that you can use so that you can improve your mental health, improve the quality of your life, and do things to increase your longevity. So if you want to look at the different areas that are important, one of the things is fats. I mean, I know that when I grew up, they always used to say that fats are not good for you, or they said saturated fats are dangerous. And yet we need fats to support our brain. If we don't have fat, we're not nourishing and they're good fats. I mean, we're not necessarily talking the trans fats are not good for us, but if we can get healthy saturated fats and if we can get fatty fish, all of those kinds of things that are important to increase the amount of neurotransmitters that we have in our brain. Carbs, they regulate fat metabolism and they generate energy. So you don't necessarily want to have all the white carbs or the carbs that aren't good for you, but complex carbohydrates are important because they help you generate energy and they regulate your fat metabolism. You have to be careful that, especially with the carbs, because of glucose. If you have too many carbs and it's turned into glucose, and we have too much glucose and your A1C is too high, then you have the risk of many problems. I mean, obviously diabetes, but also it's increased your risk of dementia by 35%. So eating too many carbs that are not healthy for you is not a good thing. So working on balance is important. You don't have to be perfect, but you do need to pay attention to the good things that you put in your body. Proteins, they are also essential for physical and mental health. And everyone is different in terms of the amount of protein that they need. And in times of stress, you need to have more protein. For some people during times of stress, they don't feel like they can eat at all. And so they kind of shut down and they don't nourish themselves. And yet during times of stress, it's important that we both drink an awful lot of water and also get things into our body like protein, a power shake, or even some sort of bone broth, which gives us a lot of nutrients, making sure all of our electrolytes are being completed so that we make sure that we're not our energy level. I mean, a lot of times people say, I don't have any energy, and they go and they are checked sometimes in their physician's office. Sometimes they end up going to the hospital because they're feeling dizzy. They're not quite sure what's going on. And the hospital, of course, they do an MRI, and they spend a ton of money. And they really just had, they were not, sometimes they have a UTI, so that could be a problem. But the other thing that will also show up is they are dehydrated. So making sure that you drink enough water, making sure that sometimes you have an electrolyte solution that has potassium and magnesium and salt. will also support you so that you will have more energy, and it will help to your cells to get full, and that's important. Protein is important. Veggies are important, and protein and veggies help you feel satisfied and feel satiated at the end of your meal. Having raw nuts and eggs are important to add, as well as complex carbohydrates. And food nourishes your brain and your emotions. So at least today we're giving you a little explanation about how it all interrelates. And as I said, it's just a beginning, because I could do 8 weeks for sure, of an hour and a half, so that we can learn so much. There's so much to learn in the field of nutrition, and most physicians don't have time, or they weren't trained in all of that. And so the quick fix is giving you a medication. Sometimes you still need to be on a medication, but maybe you would need to be on a lower dose of medication. Or sometimes you can do enough change in your lifestyle that maybe the medication isn't required at all. So that's always the best thing and best outcome we can have, but that isn't always possible. So if you would like some more information about the food mood informational packet that I give out to people, so that you can look at your own food mood diet and then begin to make some changes, please feel free to email me at Karen@coachingagingadults.com, and I will be able to send it along to you. And then if you wanted any more time to evaluate it, we could do that as well. I hope you have a good day and enjoy healthy eating.